Hi everyone, Christina here. Welcome to day 15 of the holiday card series. It is just flying by. I can't believe we're already at day 15. Thank you guys so much for tuning in and watching and leaving comments and just being overall just amazing people. I so appreciate all of you guys tuning in. Today's card is actually one that started out with the idea of doing some colored pencil coloring using a stamp set from Mama Elephant. And then I was really taken with this stamp from Inkblot. I think it looks really, really cool, kind of a very graphic stamp, juxtaposed with more organic nature of the image from Mama Elephant. So let's get into it. The stamp set from Mama Elephant that I'm going to be using is called Pine and Posy, and I'm actually going to be stamping the really, really large, long border image, as well as using the coordinating dies to cut out that image to do a little bit of masking. So I'm going to be using those two today. I'm also going to be using the big angle background from Inkblot. I thought these two would look really cool together. I'm going to start out by stamping that image from Mama Elephant onto some white cardstock using VersaFine Onyx Black ink. This white cardstock is cut to 4 1/4 tall by 5 1/2 wide at this point. I will be cutting it down to be a little bit smaller so that it can be matted on a card, but for now this is the exact size of a card front. After I had that stamped and walked my fingertips all over that really large image, I grabbed a sheet of Masking Magic paper from Gina K Designs, and I placed that in my Misty stamp tool just in the same spot, and then stamped in the same ink. I'm going to be using this mask to protect the area while I do some ink blending and stamping. And because this masking paper is a little bit slick so that it doesn't allow ink to go through, because it's a little bit slick and I used a pigment ink for stamping, it was a little wet, so I did use my heat tool to speed up the drying, and then I ran it through using the coordinating die. And this die does not cut the very bottom of the image, so I did take some scissors and just trim off the very bottom so that now I can use it as a mask on this white cardstock that I've stamped. Peeled off the release paper off the back, and then put it directly down over the top of this stamped area. This is going to protect the area so that I can color it with colored pencils later. For now, I'm going to do some ink blending. So I'm going to put down the Waffle Flower Water Media Matte. That just holds this cardstock in place while I blend on top. The first color I'm using is Pine Needles, and I'm using some Distressed Oxide ink. I'm using a Honeybee blender brush for this, and I'm blending the color up, concentrating it near the line of foliage, and blending it up to fade out completely. I then grabbed some Twisted Citron. This is going to add a little more warmth to this green. I realized it was quite cool toned and I wanted it to be a little bit warmer, so adding some Twisted Citron would do that. Used my heat tool to speed along the drying process. Since I am going to be doing some heat embossing next, I needed to make sure it was completely dry. And I'm going to test it before I move on to the stamping, just because I want to make sure that it is completely dry. So I tested that, everything looked good. I then prepped it with an anti-static powder tool and then inked up the background using some Versamark ink. Versamark is a very sticky ink, so it's going to be perfect for heat embossing powder. So I closed my Misty door and stamped down onto this background, and it's going to stamp everything, this entire background, onto that white piece of cardstock, except I'll be able to peel off the masked area later so that those lines aren't over all of the leaves and berries. So I'm going to be applying some white embossing powder from Brutus Monroe. This is the color Alabaster, and I just sprinkled that on and then tapped off the excess so that I'm left with only the design that I stamped. Before I heat set this, I'm actually going to peel up that mask. I think you could probably wait until after you've melted the embossing powder, but I decided to just peel it off right now. And then I took a heat tool and heat set those lines until they were smooth and melted and all of the powder was dissolved. I'm now going to do quite a bit of coloring with colored pencils. I'm using some Polychromos colored pencils from Faber-Castell, and I'm just going to do some very simple colored pencil coloring. I've sped up the video so that I can get through this a little quicker, and I'm also going to turn on some music so you can enjoy all of the coloring. Once again, just very, very simple coloring. After completing all of the coloring with colored pencils, I grabbed the A2 layers dies from Waffle Flower, and I cut out my entire panel so that it was a little bit smaller. This is one of those reasons why I really love these layers dies from Waffle Flower, because you can really center the die exactly where you want it. I'm now using the Mary die set from CZ Design, and I'm cutting out the Mary sentiment 4 times out of some white cardstock. This is some Neenah Classic Crest Solar White 80-pound cardstock, and I cut this out 4 times so that I could stack it and make it very, very thick. I'm now using the Tiny Words Christmas stamp set from Simon Says Stamp, and I'm stamping one of the sentiments onto some Schoolhouse Red cardstock from Simon. I prepped the area with an anti-static powder tool and then stamped in Versamark ink and applied some more alabaster embossing powder over the top. I heat set that with my heat tool until it was smooth and melted, and then I trimmed it down so that it was a long, narrow strip. Eventually, I'm going to be putting the sentiment directly on top of that red strip, so I just wanted to see how that would look. When it comes to stacking these die cuts so they look really nice, I use some G&K Connect glue and I dab dots on all over the back of this die cut. Then I'm going to pounce it onto some scratch paper, just some used cardstock, and that's going to remove a little bit of the adhesive so that it's not going to smush out from out on the edges of my die cut when I put these together. And I like to use some tweezers to get the initial placement, and then I pick up the die cuts so that I can use my fingertips and very gently guide them into place so that they're lined up just perfectly. And I did that so that all 4 were stacked together. My card base is made out of some Neenah Classic Crest Solar White cardstock. This is the 110-pound version. And I just adhered my colored and blended background using some foam adhesive. I then grabbed that Mary sentiment and I adhered it together by putting some adhesive on the bottom loop of the letter Y and then pressing that down onto that red strip. I then put some adhesive on the strip itself, as well as some dots on my stacked die cut. This is going to make sure that it adheres to my card front and it's not going to have any issues with it peeling up or pulling up. And just to help with that, I did press that down my fingertips really well. And then I grabbed an acrylic block to just weight down that the whole greeting and sentiment area. And that finishes the card for today. I really love how this turned out with all of the colored pencil coloring as well as all of the ink blending and embossing. I really love how this one turned out. It's a really different card, not one that I would normally put together, such different elements, but I think it turned out beautifully. I love the coloring, I love the ink blending, and I really love that sentiment that I layered up all those different die cuts. I think it turned out really, really neat. On screen, I've got 3 more videos for you to check out, and like I've done in the past, I'm gonna have all 10 previous years of the Holiday Card Series, all day 15, listed down below in the video description. So you can click over and take a walk down memory lane and revisit all of those card videos. Thank you so much for watching. I'll be back on Friday with day 16.